Now I'm pleased to introduce Mr. John Delmatoff. John has been a senior corporate leader in both the public and private sector for over 30 years. He is currently a senior associate partner with Creative Healthcare, where he is responsible for developing and delivering CHC's emotional and behavioral intelligence training programs to CHC's healthcare clients. John is also currently the principal at Pathfinder Executive Coaching, where he coaches senior and mid-level corporate executives in a broad range of business organizations in the U.S., Europe, and Australia. As an executive coach and certified professional behavioral analyst for the past 20 years, he has helped senior executives develop their personal leadership skills and build strong leadership and management teams. John also serves on the faculty of the American College of Healthcare Executives, where he delivers emotional and behavioral intelligence leadership training to senior healthcare leaders across the United States. Please join me in welcoming John Delmatoff.
Thank you very much for joining us today. We're going to talk about a subject that is near and dear to my heart. I speak a great deal on the subject of emotional intelligence, and today I want to talk about it in the context of a quality improvement initiative, or a quality improvement initiative that most of you are going to be involved in if you're not involved right now. The objectives for today is I want to help you to understand why any organizational change is so difficult to achieve. There are some reasons, and I think if we know those reasons, we can get out in front of it and beat the odds against us, which are sizable, as I'll explain shortly. The fact is, many change initiatives fail. Now, let me suggest what I'm saying here is that if you are involved in quality improvement, in all likelihood, you're going to be involved in some level or some manner of change. So when I say change initiative, I'm talking about quality improvement, I'm talking about performance improvement, I'm talking about the elimination of waste, and I'm talking about these issues in the context of virtually any business organization. I want to help you understand how emotionally intelligent leadership can be a change accelerant. It can not only eliminate some of the obstacles that you will encounter in bringing about change, but it can actually accelerate that change. Some of you may not consider yourself to be leaders. Let me suggest that you need to get over that real fast, because if you're going to lead the charge in terms of quality improvement or improving change, productivity, performance, and so forth, you must function as a leader, whether your title says that or not. Lastly, I want to whet your appetite for learning more. This is a very complex subject, the idea of emotional intelligence. In fact, right after this webinar, I'm leaving for Atlanta for an ACHE conference where I'll be presenting this subject over 2 full days. It's an immersion class. So obviously we can't get involved in that level of detail in a 1-hour webinar, but I will leave you hopefully not hanging, but whet your appetite and give you some leads and some direction on where to go to get more information on this very timely and invaluable subject. Here are 2 numbers that I wish each of you can take away from this presentation: 70 and 29. They indicate the following, or they're indicative of the following. 70% of all change initiatives across all industries, all sizes of businesses and so forth, either fail outright or are severely compromised. 7 out of 10. That's disheartening, to say the least. 29% of change initiatives don't even have a plan for implementation. It's like senior management rolls it out, says this is what we've got to do, Godspeed, good luck, and then they're gone, and folks like you are left holding the bag. Don't forget these numbers. The odds are working against you in terms of putting together a truly effective and successful change initiative of any kind. That's the bad news. Now let's start moving more towards good news. Why is change so difficult to achieve? As I already said, 70% of all change initiatives fail or are severely compromised. All of these things, quality improvement, process improvement, and so forth, are all considered change initiatives. Some of you may have seen this formula, E equals Q times A. I think General Electric in the 60s devised this formula, where the effectiveness of a solution, E, is the function of the quality of the solution and the acceptance by those whose support is needed to implement it. And A is where the game is won or lost. We'll talk about that in just a little bit. Understand that any organizational change is an emotional event. Whether it's small, whether it's large, virtually any organizational change is an emotional event. Even if I know that the change is going to result in an improvement, even if I know that it's probably best for the organization and for my career, it's still considered an emotional event, and different people will respond in different ways on an emotional level. The reason that many change initiatives fail is what motivates leaders may not motivate most of their employees. If, for example, you're involved in some kind of a quality improvement initiative, the leaders may be coming from a whole different mindset than the people who are tasked with implementing the change and doing all the block and tackling, the heavy lifting. So we have a difference in motivations. Employees are what they think, feel, and believe in, not what the leader thinks or feels or believes in. This is the great divide, and every time I go into a provider organization, almost immediately I can sense this divide between senior leadership and the people who will be charged with implementing these kinds of improvements or changes. Leaders will often forget about or ignore the fact that change doesn't happen without the individuals charged with implementing the change actually change their thinking, beliefs, and behaviors. I've lost count of the number of individuals who have said things like, look, I know that this is a necessary change, but I've been doing this for the past 15 years. I've been doing it this way. I know it. I understand it. And I'll be darned if I'm going to change it now. And I don't care what the profit motive or the efficacy motive is, whatever it is. They're not going to change. They're stuck. And leaders can't ignore that. We need to know if that's going to come about and where it's coming from. And here is a most important reason that change initiatives fail. The initiators of change will most often fail to include the implementers in designing the entire change process. They hand it to them as a fait accompli and say, here, make this happen. At that point, the followers don't own the change that the implementers are asking them to carry out. If we can somehow get the implementers to own the process, they will be fully engaged and they will implement it at a much higher level than people who are simply handed a roadmap and a set of outcomes and basically told to make it happen. I believe that change initiatives always point to a failure of leadership. And if you're in charge of some kind of a quality improvement initiative and it fails, at the end of the day, the fickle finger of fate is going to turn around and point to you because you will be perceived as the leader, and I don't want any of you to fail at this. In the general population, we look at people in terms of whether they're initiators or supporters or resistors. Now take a look at this. These are, if I can get my cursor to work here, 18% of people in the general population are considered initiators. These are the extroverted, task-oriented individuals. Behaviorally, we call them the core Ds. These are the folks who are typically in leadership. They have a high sense of urgency. They're very competitive. They don't want to lose. These are people who are big on designing or devising the purpose and the vision for the change, but not necessarily staying involved with the change. Then we get down to the second group, the extroverted, people-oriented individuals, 28%, almost 1 out of 3. These are the supporters. These are the people who will typically want to understand what the change is about, why we're doing it, but once they do, their optimism and enthusiasm can carry the day. It's going to be very important that we understand who these people are because they're the cheerleaders. They can accelerate and push down the change much more effectively than the people up here, the initiators, do. That's the good news. Then we get into the resistor audience. 40% of the general population are introverted, people-oriented. I know that sounds like a misnomer, but it's not. 40%, almost 1 out of 2, are resistors. These are the people who will say, why do we have to do this now? What's the rush? I don't understand, and I don't have a clue as to why we're doing this. The problem is they oftentimes will not express that verbally. They simply pack it down inside. They may look you right in the eye and say, okay, yes, I understand, we've got to do this, when they're thinking, really, get me out of here. I need to polish up my resume. They're worried about job security. They're worried about whether the quality improvement initiative is going to mean the end of their career, and they're going to have to start looking somewhere else. And by the way, when we go into an organization and we do an assessment across a broad range of employees and so forth, this 40% number jumps up. There are actually more of these resistors in a typical healthcare organization, because the positive side of them is they're helpers. They are supporters. They're people who want to relieve suffering. They are people who want to help in any way they can. If we can get their allegiance and get them behind a change initiative, we've won the day. Lastly, up on the corner here, we get the another group of resistors. These are the, I don't want to say cynics, but the ones who are going to look at something rather skeptically and say, why have we chosen this particular approach to go to address this challenge we're facing? They want to know why. They're driven by a fear of failure. They're driven by a sense of wanting to make certain that the right approach has been selected. And until that assurance has been delivered, they're going to be resistors. So you can see when we add 40 and 14, over half of the population are resistors. Someone said to me the other day, how does this work in a political situation like when we vote? And I don't know. I don't touch that with a 10-foot pole. But based on about 3.5 million assessments nationwide, I'm very confident in these numbers that 54% or more of us are generally resistant to almost anything, in spite of what we hear on the media and so forth. This is an actual organization that I worked with not too long ago in the Midwest. You can see that the green circles represent senior management. They're in the initiator and supporter area. But look at where mid-level management, these are the people who will be implementing a change initiative. Look how they populate the resistor portion. We get a few of senior managers over here, but by far, most of the resistors are mid-level managers. And in this organization, the change initiative failed miserably, and that's when they called in our organization to say, what happened? We threw our money at this, we threw our best thinking at this, and it failed miserably. And the reason it failed was because the green people, the senior managers, failed to convey the importance of the change, failed to include the mid-level managers in designing the change, and failed to emphasize or stay involved in the change process. Senior managers or senior leadership devised the program and then promptly exited the building and left it up to senior managers to hold the bag, so to speak. So this is indicative of what we see happening all the time in small organizations and large organizations. Initiators and supporters will get behind a change with a lot of enthusiasm and support and so forth, but the people who are left to actually implement it don't understand it, they don't own it, and therefore they push back. The question you have to ask yourself as you're involved in any kind of a change initiative or quality improvement initiative is, where are we going to meet resistance? Who are these resistors? And there are various ways you can find out, but understand that they're out there. And if you don't make a genuine and earnest effort to find out where they are, you have no right to say, well, we were blindsided by that. I promise you they are out there. The 6 stages that people go through when they, in terms of being concerned or even alarmed about changes, they often don't get enough information. They often are not told why this is coming about. They often are not told how this is going to affect their personal security. They're worried about the effect it's going to have on them personally. They're not reluctant at all to put themselves at the front of the line and say, wait a minute, what's this going to do to my career? What's this going to do to the department that I've spent so many years building, and now you guys are pulling the rug out from under me? They don't understand the implementation process. They see change as being disruptive, not additive, because they haven't been involved in designing it. They don't own it. They're wondering about the impact that this is going to have on the entire organization, not just their department, but the entire organization. If we're talking about a quality improvement initiative dealing with ER throughputs, for example, they're wondering what impact is this going to have on all the other parts of our delivery organization that are going to be impacted by this. They want to collaborate, but who do they collaborate with? A bunch of people who basically are just as frightened and just as resistant as they are. This is why it's so important for senior leadership to stay involved throughout the initiative process so that leaders are actually collaborating with the implementers and supporting them. And finally, there's no room for refinement. Like I said before, it's almost a fait accompli. The implementers are charged with putting together a plan to make this happen. Any way that they choose to maybe refine it or calibrate it to be better suited to the organization is met by resistance from senior managers. So this is the molasses, so to speak, that slows down virtually any kind of a change initiative. So how are emotionally intelligent leaders uniquely equipped to lead their organizations through change? And again, I'm going to suggest that all of you, whether you are by title classified as a leader or not, you must take a leadership posture. I like John Maxwell's definition of leadership. You know, you look up all these various definitions. Maxwell's definition is one word: influence. I like the way he says that. One word. If I'm not influencing people, I'm not leading them. Your job as a leader of a change initiative or a quality improvement initiative is to exercise leadership, that is influence, and that's exactly what an emotionally intelligent approach to leadership emphasizes. EQ leaders are actively involved in any change initiative from the get-go. Now, oftentimes you're not going to be able to get senior leadership involved, but that doesn't mean that's kind of an automatic response from senior leadership. You've got to figure out a way to try to build their visibility and include them to send the message to everyone involved in the change that senior leadership is behind this. From the very beginning, they can't just say that we need to improve this and then disappear. That's a sure sign of and predictor of failure. Emotionally intelligent leaders will incorporate the thinking of the people who will be implementing this into designing the change process. This is very important. These leaders will sit down and have planning and creative discussions with people in an effort to create what I call authorship. Authorship equals ownership. If we're talking about improving quality in pharmacy department or any other department in the hospital, we need to sit down with the people who will actually be charged, who will be affected by this change most strongly, and ask them to help in designing the change. If they help in designing it, there's a far greater likelihood that they'll own it, and then they'll be fully engaged. Emotionally intelligent leaders understand where and why resistance is likely to occur. Again, we need to know who the resistors are. Managing change successfully means that I understand and recognize that people have different fears. Some of the resistors will fear any change because they don't know if it's the right kind of change. Others will fear the change because they'll think that maybe their own job security is at stake. But fear must be managed. Understand that that's an underlying cause of why so many change initiatives fail. It's just fear. It's important that emotionally intelligent leaders tee up the change in a way that resonates with leaders. And let me give you just a brief example. Working with a leader not too long ago, he stood up in front of a group of his senior managers and said, we've been studying this issue for a long time. This is something we feel strongly about. this is what we're going to do. Each one of you will be charged with a specific area of responsibility, and we want to spread this across as many people as possible, and so on and so forth. Basically telling them this is how it's going to happen. Listen up and take on your area of responsibility, and that's it. I sat down with the CEO later on, and I said, he asked me what I thought, and I said, well, judging by the lack of input and comments made by senior leaders, I think what you really did was you scared them. And maybe another approach would be for you to stand up in front of these same leaders if we could somehow turn back the clock and say, this is a change that we studied for a great deal of time. This is a change that we know is going to have an impact on not only the quality of care that we deliver to our patients, but also the quality of employment that we offer to our employees in our organization. And I'm paraphrasing, but here's the important part. We can't do this without your help. Now that's a huge difference. Instead of saying, you're going to be given an area of responsibility, you'll be charged with success and outcomes and so forth, he should have said, we can't do this without your help. And let me tell you that resistors, that 40% group, that word help really resonates with them. Use it a lot. Ask for their help. H-E-L-P. I've seen that word produce almost magical outcomes and results. It resonates with the listener. They're naturally helpers. Asking them for help, in all likelihood, you'll get that's the opening door to support. So what is emotional intelligence? Well, here's Goleman's definition. The ability to perceive and understand our own emotions and the emotions of others, and having insight to oneself and awareness and empathy for others. That's fine as far as it goes. I've asked clients to read books by Daniel Goleman, like Working with Emotional Intelligence, Primal Leadership. Some of the books I'm going to recommend you read. And the comment that most often I hear after someone's read those books is, John, this is really good stuff, but how do I operationalize it? And that's where so many of these writings fall short. They just don't know how to take it from, I understand the concept of neuroplasticity, I understand the concept of making changes and so on and so forth, but how do I actually do it? And that's where a lot of people stumble on the whole issue of becoming an emotionally intelligent operator or leader. Emotions are a mental state that arises spontaneously, according to the American Heritage Dictionary. They just happen. And when we think about emotions, we think of mad, sad, glad, and scared. There are many, many other emotions as well. But think about this. How do we see emotions? I can't peer into your head to see what you're thinking or feeling. Here are 6 people, 6 women, or 6 versions of the same woman, experiencing different emotions. If I look at this person, the one in the middle and the top row, I say, well, she's pretty upset about something. She's pretty angry. Because I'm looking at the expression on her face. I'm looking at the open mouth and probably the words that are coming out of that mouth. I look at this version of her, and she's pretty happy. She's very happy. I look at this person in the lower right corner, and she's thinking, oh, sympathy or empathy. Oh, that's too bad. I'm so sorry to hear that. Then I look at this person right here who's surprised by something. Wow, you're kidding. I didn't think about that. And then I look at this person in the lower left, and she's thinking, oh, I'm so sad. I'm so sad about that. I mean, these are easy. But look at this person right here, the one in the upper left-hand corner. What the heck is she thinking? This is the non-emotive. They're a poker face. You don't want to play cards with this lady because you don't know what she's thinking or what she's holding in her hand. She's pushing her emotions down. 1 out of 2 people in the average healthcare provider organization is this lady right here. You don't know what they're thinking. They don't want to make waves. They don't want to upset the boat. They don't want to cause disruption or problems. So they push down their real feelings and mask them with a not unpleasant kind of a face. But we don't know what she's thinking. Emotions and behaviors. Emotions are internal and unseen. I can't see them, period. They're expressed differently by different people. When I ask somebody, how will I know if you're angry, The answer is, well, you'll know it in a heartbeat because you may listen to my language or watch my body language, and you'll see it in a heartbeat. Others will say, oh, I usually just go for a walk. That means I'm trying to get over something. And it just goes on and on and on. But the most common answer I hear is, oh, you won't know it. They hide it, they mask it, they push it down, the non-emotive. Emotions are expressed differently by different people. Behaviors are a cognitive response to events. Something happens that upsets me. The emotion I feel is anger, impatience, frustration, and so forth. That's behavior. That's a cognitive response to the events around me. Behaviors are what people see, hear, and respond to. I don't respond to anger. I respond to angry behavior. I don't respond to surprise. I respond to a surprised individual, and the surprise is evidenced by their behavior. Understand the connection between what we can't see and what we can see, between emotions, which are invisible, and behaviors, which we see, hear, and respond to. Emotional intelligence evidences itself through our behavior. Somebody asked me recently, John, how do I know if I'm dealing with an emotionally intelligent leader? Well, first of all, emotional intelligence is not a destination. You don't study it. You don't take a course and get certified and poof, you're emotionally intelligent. It's a journey. You will have emotionally intelligent episodes and days, and you will have non-emotionally intelligent episodes and days. It's a constant journey, but it's always evidenced through our behavior. If I'm working with a client in a coaching capacity, I can tell very quickly after working with that client whether or not they have even engaged in the process of trying to build their emotional intelligence. And sadly, very often they haven't. It's always evidenced through their behavior. So what does this mean? Emotional intelligence is best observed and studied through the lens of personal behavior. You want to know how smart someone is or how emotionally intelligent they are? You see it through the lens of personal behavior. Building emotional intelligence requires a study of human behavior. I wish you all could be students of human behavior. Some of you may be, because human behavior is what we see. It's the visible evidence, which I call the study behavioral intelligence. So now I've thrown another Q into the mix here. EQ and BQ together are incredibly powerful. Behavioral intelligence, I call it the language of emotional intelligence. Behavioral intelligence is a set of skills and abilities, it takes a lot of time to develop it, that are used to select and execute at will the right behaviors to be effective with people and situations. Some of you will deal with a senior manager who is blustery, in your face, very aggressive, angry and assertive, and they're acting that way because that's the way they get results. That approach has served them very well. How do you deal with that? What kind of response do you sum up? Do you try to out-bully them? Do you try to out-yell them? Do you just shut down? You have to figure out a way to deal with that kind of behavioral situation. You do so while avoiding negative or destructive behaviors. Behavioral intelligence is a critical leadership skill. What does this look like? Now, this is a wordy kind of a definition, but it's designed to build a foundation of mutual understanding and respect. One of the cautionaries I give to people is when you're faced with a bully who's in your face and really trying to intimidate you and push you down, the worst thing you can do is stand there and take it and not respond back. And I don't mean respond back by arguing or getting in a fight with them. I mean cultivating artful pushback. Artful pushback will gain respect for you in their eyes as opposed to just sitting there and taking it, because that bully or that aggressive leader will simply say, well, that person doesn't even have the spine to stand behind their own convictions. Emotional and behavioral intelligence deals with insights into how people with different behavioral styles approach team dynamics, motivation, and workplace relationships. All of this, the study of human behavior, leads to greater understanding, the creation of what I call resonance, and building trust. When trust is built, change can occur. When I don't trust the leader that I'm working with, the fact is I'm going to resist anything that they say because I don't know what's at stake here. So how do we build leadership skills, emotionally intelligent leadership skills? If you Google this, you'll find all kinds of maps and programs and so forth. I like simple plans, and I think Daniel Goleman has probably the simplest approach to emotional intelligence, building emotionally intelligence leadership skills. He has 4 steps. The first one is self-awareness. It's an objective understanding of how you're perceived by others, good and bad. I believe in the use of psychometric assessments to do this. I always start with a psychometric assessment, a behavioral assessment, to help an individual understand how they are perceived by other people, and just kind of this is what you look like behaviorally and emotionally. One of the best ways to achieve that is through a psychometric assessment. Some of you have gone through 360s. That can work as long as the 360 has been done by someone who knows what he's doing. I think an interview type of 360 as opposed to a paper instrument 360 is much better, but it's objective. It's an insight into your own emotions. I'm what they call a very high D personality. My core emotion is anger. I have a short fuse, and I understand that. And I understand in situations that I'm facing that it can be it can trigger that emotion in me, that impatience, that anger. I'm about to get on the freeway and drive to the airport, and woe be unto the person who's in front of me driving too slow, because I'm going to get impatient. That's just, it's a visceral response of mine. I need to understand the effect that getting angry or being impatient has on other people. If my wife is in the car with me and I'm getting very angry and impatient, it really upsets her. I don't intend to do that. It is an unintended effect that my anger and my impatience has on her. So I know this about myself, that I have this short fuse, that I'm impatient with people, that I like things short and sweet. I talked to a guy in San Francisco, a colleague, and his mantra, he's a higher D than I am, his mantra is, John, when someone comes to me, my attitude is be brief, be bright, be gone. That's the way he likes to deal with people. And if you know that, it's fine. I made the mistake one time of emailing him and saying, hey, Jonathan, I'm going to be in the city next week, and thought it'd be great if we could have a cup of chowder and just kind of catch up on things. And the response I get back from Jonathan is, great. And I thought, John, come on, you know better than this. I gave him this lengthy invitation, and he responds with one word, great. He's the one who says, be brief, be bright, be gone. So my one-word, my very abbreviated response back to him is, great. Name the restaurant, name the time, see you there. And that was it. And I mean, I've been studying this for years, and I still make mistakes like that. So I know about what my self-awareness is. I understand who I am and how I'm perceived by others. Now, what am I going to do about it? I have to know the difference between feelings and actions. All feelings are acceptable. I could never tell somebody, don't be angry. That's ridiculous. Of course they're going to be angry. But not all actions are. Not all expressions of anger are acceptable. I have to know how to keep my disruptive emotions from throwing me off track. I have to focus on creating resonance with the people that I'm working with, not dissonance. Now we turn outward. Social awareness, empathy. There's a difference. Cognitive and emotional empathy are, I think, the same thing. I read them. I recognize other people's behavioral styles. I need to learn to identify the styles and the needs of the people around me, recognizing that they're not all the same. I need to become a student of human behavior. This is why when I started out in my career as a coach, I really wanted to study. I saw that what gets people in trouble most often is their behavior. They're hired for how smart they are and their technical skills. They're fired because they can't get along well working with other people. And if I could empower my clients to become more personally effective by being students of human behavior, that would make them that much more successful. So I need to learn to identify quickly emotional and behavioral styles through observation. I need to observe and listen. I need to care enough be patient enough to create resonance. Sometimes it means I have to slow way down because my sense of urgency is so high. Resonance leads to understanding, empathy, connection, and trust. All because I read someone's behavior, I understand what they need from me, and I give it to them. And that leads to the fourth criteria here, which is relationship management. Now, this may sound a little crass, but I want to encourage you to stop using the golden rule to manage workplace relationships. The golden rule doesn't work. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. I'm a very assertive and aggressive personality. If I treated everyone the way I want to be treated, we'd go to war. I have to understand how other people want to be treated and go to them and deliver what they want from me. I have to manage relationships according to what the other person needs. And that, again, is based on a study of human behavior. I have to adapt away from my personal behavior and practice behavioral agility. I have to, in my case, I have to usually slow down. I actually have to lower the tone of my voice because my loud voice will turn some people off. I have to ask questions. I have to be not quite so dictatorial and this is the way we're going to do it, my way or the highway. I have to back off of all of that because that creates dissonance. Becoming an emotionally and behaviorally intelligent leader means I first of all become self-aware. Invest in a psychometric assessment to do this. I'm a big fan of the DISC assessment because I understand it, and I prefer it much more over the Myers-Briggs personality inventory. Focus on your behavior and emotions in order to be effective. Understand how your behavior and emotions can actually get in the way and derail you. Be aware of what other people need from you. I'm going into a meeting in half an hour or whatever, and I'm going to sit down with a bunch of people. What do the people in that room need from me? Do they need me to stop talking and be a better listener? Do they need me to be less expressive of my impatience and my anger? Do they need me to be more inquisitive and bring out their thoughts and thinking by asking them questions? What do they need from me? I need to talk in a language that they understand and appreciate. I'm big on the idea of asking them for help because I know it resonates so many with them, and that's what they want to hear. Emotionally and behavioral intelligent leadership is not a leadership tool du jour. It's been around for 45 years. When Goleman got a hold of it, he popularized it, but it's been around for a long, long time. Remember, these are both journeys. They're not destinations. You don't become emotionally intelligent and certified in it, and poof, you're done with it. It is a day-to-day study. I have to think about my emotional intelligence right now when I get in my car and get on the freeway and drive to the airport. I can choose to be either emotionally intelligent about that drive or I can choose not to. That's not pretty. Understand that the IQ ship has sailed. None of you are going to become any smarter than you are right now. Hopefully a little wiser, but it's fixed. But emotional and behavioral intelligence can be developed through study and application. It's easily learned, really, and applied and retained. What amazes me is how much of this stuff I actually do retain after just a relatively brief amount of time of practicing it. That's the evidence of neuroplasticity. You can leverage this through your entire team. If you take this on, you can push it down to your team because they will be attracted by the behavior. Hey, what's going on with Bob? He really seems to be kind of a changed person. He's more patient. That's an attractive kind of a quality. Here's a reading list for you. I strongly recommend The Four-Dimensional Manager by Julie Straw. This is a half-inch thick paperback. You can read it in one sitting. It's really a reference book. There's a little psychometric assessment in there. You can try to take that if you want to. I would suggest something maybe a little more robust, but that would be a good start. Daniel Goleman's Primal Leadership is a great book. I would suggest that you invest in that. Talks about the application of emotional intelligence in the context of leadership. I'm a big John Maxwell fan. Developing the Leader Within You by John Maxwell is very good. He talks about the various stages of leadership that we all go through. Working with Emotional Intelligence by Daniel Goleman. And the last one by Goleman is Emotional Intelligence, Why It Can Matter More Than IQ. IQ, being smart, cognitive problem solving, and so on and so forth, is great for work, but it doesn't make you a star. Emotional intelligence does, and I think Goleman really does a very good job of doing that, of expressing that. Here's my contact information. If any of you have questions about this, if any of you has got a question about maybe how to implement this in your own organization, don't hesitate to drop me an email or give me a call. I'll get back to you. I answer questions about this all the time. Sometimes they're complex and I can't really do it in one sitting, but I'll do my very best to answer any questions you have about becoming an emotionally intelligent leader and implementing change in an emotionally and behaviorally intelligent fashion. I'm going to click the last slide, which takes us out of this mode. And Bert,
the conference has been unmuted.
Oops.
Oh, thank you, John. That was excellent. If anybody has any questions. You are all unmuted now, so John can hear you.
Hi, this is Claire Davis calling from Middlesex Hospital. Thanks for the presentation. It was great.
Good.
And our question, or my question, is this. I mean, you talk about IQ being kind of embedded. It's there. It's not going to go, in an upward direction. But emotional intelligence as being, pliable, movable.
Right.
My question is this. What's the span on baseline? In other words, we all must start at a different spot. We all must need some improvement. But how wide is that bridge of where we start, baseline?
Well, baseline of emotional intelligence, I take it you're speaking of.
Yes.
Start at the beginning, self-awareness. How self-aware are you? I think if you break Goleman's process down into each of these 4 steps, you can establish your own sense of baseline by simply saying, I'm going to take a psychometric assessment or I'm going to implement a 360 and there's my baseline. That's how I am perceived by other people. That's what self-awareness is. That tells you the distance you're going to have to go in order to begin to get to the next stage, which is self-management. I hope that's answering your question, but I think that starting with self-awareness is where you need to start. How self-aware are you and the people in your department? Get that nailed down. Then move on to self-management. What you'll find is some people say, look, this is the package. I understand that I come across kind of badly to people or I'm not a participant and so forth, but that's the way I choose to be, and I'm not going to self-manage away from it. You're not going to change that. They're going to stay at the baseline. Some people will say, wow, I really see that I tend to shut people down, or I see that by not participating, I'm not contributing to the group. I need to change that. You'll see that change that they undertake. I'm big on establishing accountability partners. Let's say for the sake of discussion that you have a habit of interrupting people and talking over them and not letting them complete their thought. Identify an accountability partner in the next meeting you go to and tell her or him, every time you see me interrupt someone, I'm going to really try hard not to do this. Every time you see me do it, write it down. And then let's get together after the meeting and tell me how I did. That's moving from the baseline up to a level of improvement. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. I'm wondering also, though, just to shift a little bit, do you find that some people have intuitively, without trying, start at a higher level?
Yeah, absolutely. I call them the intuits.
That's what I was looking for, but they still have to improve. I mean, if you are an intuit even, you would intuitively know that you still have room for growth, right?
Sure. Some people are intuitively much more empathetic and compassionate than other people are. Their journey in that particular step is relatively short compared to someone who's objective, task-oriented, and really not, focusing on the needs of people. But don't make the assumption that you're an intuit. We can all benefit from learning the concept of emotional intelligence.
Agree. Thank you.
Other questions?
Yeah, I do want Yes, this is Holly Carroll with Sanofi, and that was excellent presentation, and I followed you very well. My question is, when you do a lot of talking about kind of the top-down approach where ideas and the visionary is at that higher level, and then we've got to get others on the bus by, using our emotional intelligence and empathy and so forth. But do you have any suggestions if you are maybe that middle manager that has that idea of something that could really improve, patient outcomes in healthcare? How do you, to reverse it? Would you use the same concepts, or do the concepts change if you're trying to go upstream a little bit? Does that make sense?
I think so. If you're trying to convince senior leadership about the value of an idea that you have, obviously you put together a presentation and you try to sell them on the concept. If they've charged you with coming up with something to push down into the delivery of services in your organization, it's incumbent upon you to figure out how to demonstrate that senior leadership, the people above you, are actually behind this. You could do this by simply saying, inviting a senior leader, CEO, COO, Chief Nursing Officer, whoever, to show up at one of your meetings and basically endorse the idea that you've presented. Something that demonstrates that senior leadership is behind this. They don't have to be chairing a committee or doing anything like that, but they can demonstrate an endorsement of your idea to the people who will be charged with implementing the idea, and that can go a long way towards building a sense of trust. Does that address your question?
Yes, it does, very much so. Thank you.
Any other questions?
Great. So if there are no other questions, I'd like to thank John for this great and exciting introduction to the emotional and behavioral intelligence and how it links into quality improvement in the work that we're doing. So thank you again, John, for this. This is great.